Good morning. I'm Berks County Commissioner Christian Leinbach, and want to welcome you to our operations meeting for Tuesday, February the 27th. We're broadcasting live on Microsoft Teams live event. At this time, I'd like to recognize my executive assistant, Anne Marie Grill, to read the public comment policy.
Thank you, Commissioner Leinbach. Public comment will be accepted in person and through the Q&A function. Please include your first name, last name, and municipality for all comments. Any comments without name and municipality will not be considered. Each citizen can submit one comment. Comment length is dictated by limitations of the platform being used. Teams Q&A. In-person comments will be accepted first, followed by comments submitted virtually. The meeting comment period is limited to a total of 30 minutes, including both in-person and virtual comments. This time period may be extended at the county's discretion. Please be concise. Comments that are germane to county business will be read during the meeting and should not be considered to be interactive dialogue. The county shall be the final arbiter of whether a comment is germane and should be read. Any response to public comment will be done at the county's discretion.
I do want to confirm that we have Commissioner Rivera on the phone, not on line, so we do have a quorum established. Are there any additions or corrections for the January 30th, 2024 operation meeting minutes? Hearing none, the minutes will stand approved as presented. We do not have any public comment in person on the agenda and nothing online. So we will move right to our agenda. We have one item. This is something we do try to do 3 times a year. In the fourth quarter, we're focused on the budget for the following year. So this is the first report from our Budget and Finance Department for 2024. And this is the financial update through December 31st of 2023. And we have both our CFO and our Deputy Director of Budget and Finance. But today, our Deputy Director of Budget and Finance, Laura Jones, will be presenting. So Laura, we'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let me just get my presentation up here. All right. So today we're discussing the year ending December 31st, 2023. Back in December of 2022, we adopted the 23 budget with a $22 million deficit in the general fund and a $21.2 million deficit for all funds. For this discussion today, we are going to focus on the general fund, which is where we calculate an operating deficit or surplus, which affects our determined tax rate. So how do we think we did? Controller's office is still making entries for the year-end close, and the actual results are currently not final and are unaudited. But our projections show that we'll be ending the 23 fiscal year with a $3.2 million surplus. This is a $25.2 million improvement from the adopted budget for 2023. Here are our greatest contributors to reducing the adopted budget deficit. First and largest, the COVID relief community payments. Compared to the $27 million budgeted for 2023 for community payments, grants, the broadband project, and also Imagine Berks, we experienced slower than anticipated spending and have the unspent $21.9 million to carry over into the 24 budget. This is a timing variance, and we expect those funds to be expended by 2024 year end. Interest revenue. We did $4.3 million better than the budget due to higher yields on our entire cash portfolio. In a market where it is not favorable to refinance or apply for a new mortgage, it does make for great interest rates for earning potential, and we did much better than we had anticipated. This is also partly due to having a larger cash balance than anticipated, as unspent community payment funds or capital funds earn interest the longer they go unspent. Capital, $3.9 million in savings as compared to the 2023 adopted budget. This is a result of projects being completed at a slower rate than anticipated. This is a timing issue as many of the projects were deferred to the 2024 budget. FEMA revenue. This $3.8 million reflects unanticipated COVID FEMA cost recovery funds. We were not guaranteed that we would recover funding from FEMA for the county costs incurred during the pandemic, but this reimbursement was received during 2023, and we expect a final payment in 2024 to close out this request for reimbursement. Other. This category is netting all the other accounts included in our projection. This includes accounts that obtained higher than budgeted revenues, such as revenues in the Prothonotari's office, as well as lower than anticipated expense, excuse me, such as natural gas and electricity costs. Unrealized gains and losses. We're projecting a gain of $2.4 million due to higher market value of our investment portfolio at 12/31/23. Additional grant funding. Compared to the adopted budget, we received $1.6 million in grant funding over what was budgeted. This value includes election integrity grant funds, as we had uncertainty on whether or not these funds would be made available for the 23-24 fiscal year. Higher state aid for member libraries, additional terrorism task force funds used by our Department of Emergency Services, higher Act 13 green space funding, which we utilize for capital projects and parks, and additional grant funding related to the district attorney's office, including victim witness funding and gun violence intervention. Salaries and benefits. We're projecting $1.4 million in savings, resulting primarily from vacancies and turnover, largely from the following departments: information systems, adult probation, facilities, court reporters, MDJs, and the Register of Wills. Wage savings are offset by the higher pension actuarial determined contribution. This value was budgeted at $0. However, the ADC was determined to be $772,000 for 2023. Real estate taxes, interims, and tax claim. In total, we projected $0.9 million higher total tax related revenue, stemming from $1 million more in real estate taxes and $0.6 million higher than anticipated interims revenue, offset by $0.7 million lower tax claim revenues. This is a result of higher assessed value growth, offset by better collections rate on current year taxes. Debt interest expense. This was $0.3 million lower than we budgeted due to the partial defeasance of the 2019 bonds, which in effect lowered the interest expense. We were able to conclude this in our cash projections for 2023, but we were not certain we were moving forward with this defeasance before we had adopted the 23 budget. Along with better revenue and cost savings, we did have some unfavorable projected variances, which decreased the projected surplus. This includes the county's operating transfer for match or county contribution. In total, this unfavorable variance is $9.2 million. It includes a $7.3 million higher 911 communication center county contribution, resulting largely from their share of the debt defeasance expense. Also, we had a $2.3 million unanticipated contribution to the BCRC Enterprise Fund due to the closure of the residential center in 2023. The 2023 bond defeasance payments, we adopted the 23 budget and we did not fully anticipate defeasing our bonds. However, the opportunity and potential savings for 2023 through 2029 supported us moving forward with the partial defeasement. And the $8.4 million unfavorable variance reflects the general fund portion of the total $15.6 million defeasance expense.
And it might be important, that is different than the other two in that it's something we talked about, we planned, although you're correct, at the time we adopted the 2023 budget, we hadn't finalized that, so that's why it didn't show up. But in the end, explain why we did it. What was the benefit other than just paying down debt? What was the benefit ultimately to the county?
Commissioner, the benefit was that we were not only saving the money in 23, but also about $650,000 in 24. But once we got to 25 through 29, it reduced our outstanding debt service that we have to budget for and set aside tax revenue for by approximately 1.3 to 1.4 million per year.
Right. So over how many years?
Yeah, over through 2029.
So right.
20, well, savings in 23 through 29, the maturity of that bond. And what we did is we paid partially the fees that we took out all the bonds that had 5% coupon rates. So the highest paying interest rates, we took those out and we pretty much left intact the near-term ones that mature. We're done with those payments in 2025. So, but that was why it was worthwhile. It was absolutely a cash flow savings over the entire term of the bond compared to what the interest we avoid versus what we could even earn. We netted all that out and we came out of it. So,
And it's another reason, Laura, that the 5-year budgeting is so important. You don't want to look at this in the vacuum of 2023. This action has to be looked at in its long-term impact. So you deficit spend in 2023 to defease or pay off a bond that's saving us millions of dollars in additional interest and principal
yes.
over the remaining, what, 5 years?
It's 7 years.
Oh, 7 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
That's a
2023,
great point,
right.
Commissioner. If we had looked at this, if I had looked at this and we had looked at this just for 23,
Hmm.
and I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm going to save 300,000. And we didn't project this out. We're going, well, if we're only going to save 300,000 a year, it's not worth spending 15.6 million to do that. But because we project it out and we're going
Right.
off, what are we actually avoiding? You go, well, this is worth it. And the other thing was it's a great use of one-time use of reserves
Correct.
because we're taking out of our budget recurring operating costs that requires future tax revenue
Hmm.
or continued tax revenue to pay for it. So we're reducing the tax burden over a longer period of time by doing this. So that's all the factors that went
Yep.
in. But a 1-year look at it, we probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, because I didn't want somebody to look at this and say, wow, if they hadn't done that, they would have been looking at $12 million surplus, but not really. Short term, yes. Long term, no.
Correct.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. Inmate healthcare, this $1.1 million unfavorable variance is resulting from an unanticipated increase that was included in their new contract that was finalized during 2023. So in summary, we're projecting the county general fund to end with a $3.2 million surplus for the 2023 calendar year. Due to the systematic delay in finalizing the accounting and also to maximize the cash balance in our general fund checking, we keep a close eye on the progression of cash in our organization. This chart shows the combination of receipts and disbursements with cumulative totals representing the total general fund cash account balance. We started 2023 with a general fund cash balance of $218.6 million. We projected we would end at $187.8 million, but we ended at $218.5 million, which is about $31 million higher than we had anticipated. What are the leading causes to our cash variances? First, let's look at cash receipts. This is cash coming into the general fund. We projected about $400 million of cash coming in. The actual receipts were $391 million, which is about $8.5 million lower. On this chart, you can see the projected values and actuals for each month with the cumulative total at the end. You can see the incline on our chart increasing in the first 2 quarters, consistent with how we collect tax revenue. You can also see the timing difference on when we drew down the ARPA lost revenue grant funding in December instead of November as projected. So what are our largest contributors to lower than anticipated receipts? According to our monthly cash variance analysis, the largest contributors were the Berks. The census was lower than budgeted, creating an $8.8 million unfavorable cash variance. This is a result of staffing shortage, which suspends our ability to add additional residents at Berks.
However, the Heim was still in the black.
That is correct.
Yeah, just again, I don't want people to look at this and say the Heim lost $8.8 million.
No,
Go ahead. It's just receipts.
this is a cash variance.
Yes,
So
right.
where we projected
Yep.
a larger revenue value, the revenue is lower. However, the operating expense is low enough to still produce a profit for 23 for Berks.
Correct.
Yep. CYS and JPO billing, we had a timing delay on receiving the Act 148 Q2 advance funding due to fiscal turnover. Overall, we had a timing delay of $6.7 million in funding, which we should see in 2024 instead. MHDD, this $1.6 million unfavorable variance is due to underspending grant funds. For early intervention funding, we returned $1.4 million to the state, And for mental health and developmental disabilities funding, they cut short our current year cash by prior year underspending. So during 2023, we were shorted $1 million between those two funds. These variances are offset by $0.8 million of additional unanticipated funding received for the MH and DD funded programs. Taxes. This variance reflects the real estate taxes, interims, and tax claim revenues combined. From a cash basis, we were under our projection by $1 million. Other. This reflects the combination of all other accounts under the receipts category that combine to a total unfavorable variance of $1 million. Even though in total, the total receipts that were received were lower than projected, we did have some categories that did better than we had anticipated. This includes interest. As mentioned in our budget projection, we saw increased cash from interest earnings throughout 2023. Communication center reimbursement to the general fund. This was $2.8 million higher than anticipated. ComCenter's Title 35 funding is kept in a separate bank account, and it reimburses the general fund quarterly. This higher than anticipated reimbursement was due to a true up of 22 expenditures that weren't reimbursed until November of 23, and also an unanticipated reimbursement of general fund monies that were spent for PEMA funded expense. We get reimbursed from the PEMA checking for PEMA invoiced expenditures. Aging block grant. This is mostly a timing variance. We received January's cash payment at the end of December, but we also experienced a higher than anticipated 23-24 fiscal year allocation compared to the prior allocation for 22-23, which we built our budget and our cash projections on. Elections integrity grant. Unanticipated state funding of $0.6 million was not included in the budget or the cash. From a conservative approach, we were uncertain if whether the 22-23 allocation would be renewed for the 23-24 fiscal year, and thankfully it was, which creates this variance. Juvenile probation. This variance is due to timing. We received the juvenile services grant for 23-24 in November of 2023, but typically these funds are not distributed until the end or the second half of the fiscal year. Employment and training. We received more grant money than anticipated due to funds available from prior years, which were drawn down or reimbursed during 2023. The main grants creating this positive variance is WIOA Youth and WIOA Adult funding sources. So along with cash receipts, we project and track cash disbursements in detail. We projected $430 million in general fund cash disbursements. We saw $391 million in actual disbursements, creating a $39 million favorable variance. On our chart, you can see a spike in May and a larger spike in November. This is our debt payments. Interest is paid in both May and November, and the principal is paid in November, creating the higher spike. The large variance you see in November is mostly due to the IGT payment that we had projected for November, but the state revised the payment plan, and instead that payment was made in January of 2024. The largest contributors to our $39.1 million cash disbursements favorable variance includes COVID relief community grants, $17.4 million lower payment in total than projected. This consists of $13 million of COVID relief support, $1 million for broadband, and $3 million implementation funding for Imagine Berks that was not expended in 2023. These funds have been carried forward to the 2024 budget and are expected to be spent in 2024. Capital projects. This was $10 million lower than anticipated, mostly due to the deferral of projects to future years. IGT, as mentioned when we looked at the graph, $9.5 million of disbursements did not take place. This was a change at the state level for the IGT program, and that cash payment went out in January instead of November. All cash disbursements are combined in this $2 million favorable variance, resulting in lower disbursements. Payroll. Labor shortage is creating higher vacancies and turnover. This is offset by overtime, but it's still a $1.9 million favorable variance. Jail disbursements. This variance is being generated in a large part from a reimbursement received for inmate catastrophic health costs received against an expense account. We also had a delay in starting the medically assisted treatment program due to the contract not being finalized until June. This resulted in the program not starting until the third quarter, where our cash projections had assumed it would run almost all year. We also had lower than anticipated payments made to other jails to support housing needs for inmates and our youth offenders who are being tried as adults. So much like the cash receipts, in addition to favorable disbursement variances, we also had some unfavorable results, which are included in the total. This includes Berks. We had a $1 million unfavorable variance due to staffing shortages, which are forcing us to use employment agencies for providing RNs, LPNs, and CNAs. These costs were unanticipated at the time of our 23 cash projections. Pension, the actual costs were higher than projected, as we had mentioned earlier in our budget review. We anticipated the annual determined contribution to the pension plan to be zero for 2023, but it was actually $772,000. Employee benefits, health costs in particular, this $0.6 million unfavorable variance was due to large healthcare claims in the fourth quarter. So all of these mentioned items combined result in a $39.1 million favorable cash disbursements variance. And with that, I will conclude our financial update. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you, and I turn it back to you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Laura. I could be wrong, but this is a different format of presentation than I recall from the past. Some of the charts.
Yep, we're trying.
Am I wrong about that?
Well, we added the cumulative totals at the end.
Okay.
So that we could see and tie into the next slides where we're talking about those specific totals and itemizing how they were produced. But the colors were my choice.
It's very well done. I thought it flowed well. It was very helpful.
Thank you.
So, and I asked my questions when they came up, so I don't have anything. Commissioner Rivera is online now. I don't know, Commissioner Rivera, any comments, questions?
And just want to again thank Bob and Laura and the team for the work. Great presentation. Very easy to follow. So thank you for the work, and glad to hear that we did end the year on a positive note. So thank you. Great job.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Anyone else? COO, any comments, questions? Solicitor?
As always, outstanding work by our budget and finance team, and it's good to have it. I don't know if this is something you're interested in putting up on our website under the budget department or not, just for anyone who's curious as to the cash flow and how we ended the year.
Well,
It's unaudited.
it's unaudited.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I prefer not to till the
Okay.
audit's done. I mean, we're pretty confident that we're gonna at least have these numbers, but I can think of one thing that we don't have here that could change it by $1 million, make it worse, but then there's other things that might make it better because the controller's office isn't done closing the books yet. So
That's fine. Just in the interest of transparency, that's all.
yeah,
It's a lot of work put into it, so.
Mhm.
Very good. Okay, there's no public comment in person, no public comment online, so that brings us to the end of our agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
The meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.